Welcome to Nairobi Gold Rush. I'm your host, Kuky, Kuky the baddest, Kuky the illest, Kuky the lyrical mistress, of course. And today I am privileged to host Scott Noel. Of course, he's Nairobi's Gold Rush host, but today he's our guest. How do you feel, Kwanzaa, sitting on that side?
Oh, it's quite nice. It's going to be exciting to be on the other side of the table, I guess.
Of course, yeah. Are you ready to share your story with us as well? You know,
Oh, yeah. I think there's a lot that everybody can learn from a very complex story that I have from my history.
of course. And I think we're gonna start with the background, your background, where you grew up. We can start with that. People to understand who Scott Noel is.
Yeah, sure.
Mhm.
So I grew up in the U.S., a place called Texas. I think a lot of Kenyans might know Texas from maybe the movies and
Of
seeing
course,
these
yeah.
guys in the cowboy hats and the
Mhm.
rough clothes.
Mhm.
So I grew up in the kind of small farming areas of Texas,
Mhm.
very more rural places, maybe small town like Bungoma size. I don't know,
Ah,
town
mhm.
area, but in the rural areas. So. Um, yeah, that's where I grew up, and it's a place called Plainview, Texas. It's very dry and flat. They say in Plainview, Texas, that if your dog runs away from you, you can still see it 3 days later because it's
Oh,
still moving.
wow.
So it's a very interesting place.
Yeah.
Um, so what was interesting when I was born,
Mm-hmm.
I was born with like a rare genetic condition. So I
Okay.
was born, you would call it legally blind, I guess you would say.
Mm-hmm.
I was born without the colored parts of my eye, the iris of the eye.
Mm-hmm.
And what was interesting when I was born, my mother, she went to the doctor and said, like, I think there's something wrong with my child.
Mm-hmm.
And these country doctors sometimes, these upcountry doctors, they don't know so much.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
were telling my mother, like, oh, you're just being overly protective.
Mm.
Don't, there's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
the kid. But moms know like, hey, there's something wrong
Of
here. Like
course.
my child can't see properly or can't look straight at things. So I think she was telling me the next time she went to the doctor, uh, the nurse was looking and saying, called the doctor and they start speaking quietly and like, yeah, we have a big problem here. And so back in those days, we didn't have Chat GPT, we didn't have Google even. This was back in the 80s. So
Yeah.
you know, in those small town areas, you don't know what to do. So my mother had to travel to the big city and learn about my condition and how to navigate that. So, growing up in school, I couldn't read the chalkboard. I couldn't read, a movie presented, anything like that. My vision was very bad. Even reading a book, I have to read a book like this close.
So,
Um, so I had a lot of teachers and people who helped me, but it was very difficult. You can imagine,
mm.
going through school with that condition.
So let me ask you, when you say you're legally blind, for those people who don't understand,
Yeah,
especially here in Kenya, when you tell somebody you're legally
yeah.
blind, so they don't know, you cannot see completely or?
Well, when
Mhm.
you go to like do the eye test and they have a chart that you read and they have
Mhm.
like a big letter and some smaller letters going down. I can't read the biggest letter even,
Ah,
but I
okay.
can see. But it's like very sometimes kind of blurry.
Mhm.
It's very blurry.
Okay.
So I can see things, but it's difficult,
Mhm.
right? It's a challenge.
Okay.
So you can imagine trying to go through school, and they're writing up on the chalkboard 2 plus 2, and you just don't know what's going on.
Yeah. And
So
would you recommend during that time, did the doctor maybe recommend glasses or something?
yeah, so like
Mhm.
my eyes are missing critical pieces inside of them. There's no colored part of the eye. So if you look at my eyes, they're completely black.
Mhm.
Um, it had multiple conditions associated with that. And so, because it's more of a physical thing, there's the glasses, they can't correct it because it's not like the normal conditions that people have.
Mhm.
So, yeah, no glasses, anything. So, what they realized is I could use it's kind of like a little handheld telescope that you would use to read with. So, kind of like binoculars when you're looking at animals or something like
Mm.
that. I had like a miniature thing like that I could use to read the chalkboard in school sometimes.
Okay.
But even it was very challenging because sometimes you might have a substitute teacher or a teacher who didn't know you, and they'd
Yeah.
come around and they would say, "Stop playing Army Man," and they'd steal your telescope from you,
Yeah.
and then you would just be sitting there left, not able to read or write,
Mm.
do anything. So it was very challenging. And so what I realized through that journey growing up is I wasn't going to be the biggest sports star. I wasn't going to go climbing Mount Kenya, with good vision.
Oh.
You know, you'd be like an outdoorsman. A lot of the men from my area, a
Mhm.
lot of it's about hunting, doing things that require a lot of good vision, and that
Yes,
just wasn't going to be my path in life because I didn't have the ability. I could, I tried these things, but it wasn't easy to do,
for
and
you,
you have
yeah,
to realize what your strengths and weaknesses are.
of course.
Yeah.
And so what was your dream growing up when before you realized all these things? What did you want to pursue initially?
Well, growing up, what I realized is the first kind of breakthrough was when I got a computer in the house.
Mm.
So this was like back in the early 80s, and we didn't have Microsoft Windows or anything like that. Just like kind of the green screen computer, and I could sit like this close to the computer,
Yeah.
and I could read it.
Mhm.
So I realized, hey, maybe I could do something with this because it doesn't require something that's like very far away vision.
Yes.
So um, I kind of fell in love with computers just kind of because of that, because it was something I could do and I could really pour my time into it. So I really got interested in computer programming, um, doing those type of things. And, I also had, as a kid, I used to have a subscription to this astronomy magazine. I got really interested in like working on space related projects, things like that. So, I just started seeing technology come in and realized could be something maybe I could be involved in.
Of course. Yeah.
That didn't require a lot of like working with your hands or a lot of
Yeah.
visual things.
Yeah, it's more with the screen and also now that you decided that you have found a passion in, computers and tech, this is something now you proceeded to pursue maybe in your higher learning education.
Yeah, exactly. So I found that I could do pretty good at that going through high school, and I was able to get into a fairly decent university in Texas called Rice University.
Mhm.
Uh, and I was one of those people that knew very early on, like exactly the plan I wanted to do. Some students, they like, my kids, like they don't know what they want to do. They just, they take a few classes and are trying to figure things out. I went in knowing exactly what I wanted to do. So I wanted to study engineering and business at the same time because I wanted to do like entrepreneurial things with the technology. I was like, I want to do technology and I also want to make money doing it. So I did 4 college degrees. I did 2 bachelors, one in electrical engineering and business, and then I did my master's in electrical engineering and an MBA in business
Okay.
within a 6 year period of time, I would say.
Wow. Okay.
Um,
Hmm.
so I was trying to set myself up to go into this entrepreneurial business
Of course, yeah.
world, with,
But of course, when you mention about the degrees that you pursued,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure the system over there is very different. Because
Hmm.
here, if you're pursuing 2 degrees, that is like 8 years.
Yeah.
There, it's 6 years.
Yeah.
So the education system is quite different there.
Well, part of it was just because I kind of had no fear, and I went to the schools and they were offering this program. They were like,
Mm.
you could do like 2 degrees in half
Oh.
the time, but you'll have to take like a lot of classes at the same time.
Mhm.
And so I told them, well, I'm already going to be doing engineering, so let me get my MBA while I'm here. I mean, because I know I won't come back and do it at a later time. So I don't know how I did that, but I convinced them to let me do it. So I was only like a very small number of students, one of the very small number of students that was doing that program.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so I got it done very quickly. It was very tough. It was very like challenging,
Mm.
but I knew exactly what I wanted to do. So that was the path I took with it.
So that means you're paying school fees twice or once?
What's that? Yeah.
Were you paying school fees twice or once?
Uh, it was more than the regular one,
Mhm.
I would say. Yeah,
Because one
it
thing,
costs a lot of money to go to
yeah.
school in the US.
Okay, I know, because actually I have a few cousins in the US, and
Yeah,
they tell me even the books are very expensive.
yeah,
The school fees is quite high. A
yeah,
lot of them depend on student loans.
yeah,
Some of them go to just normal colleges so that they can finish their school education.
yeah. No,
So I can imagine, yeah.
I have 2 daughters at the university age now, and even the amount that it costs now is so expensive. And
Yeah.
even back when I was in school, maybe 10,000 Kenya shillings for one book, even if you bought the used one off of your friend.
Are you serious?
Yes,
10,000 Kenya shillings for one book?
yeah, for one book,
Wow.
and you might need 7 books for the
Mhm.
semester, for 7 classes, six
Yeah.
classes. So it was crazy.
Mm.
But after doing all that, taking on the debt for the student loans, finally after about 6 years, I was able to
To
get it
finish.
completed, I guess.
Okay. And let me ask you a question,
Yeah.
still in the interest of the campus life over there.
Yeah, sure.
Do you think with the current technology, do you think the books that are being sold on physical copies are relevant, or the technology is going to take over that and it will be cheaper maybe?
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think the old idea of the textbooks is getting outdated, I would say.
Mhm.
I know there's a lot more online resources that you could do. Even back then, you'd get a textbook that was 10 years old. And so if you wanted to see a relevant topic, it would just be outdated even by the time that you got it. But that was all that you had back then.
Mm.
Now you have the internet, you have PDFs, you have online courses.
You have
It's
ChatGPT.
Yeah, Chat GPT. I mean, you. I think schooling is changing a lot
Mhm.
because you don't need to memorize history facts anymore because you just
True,
type it into Chat
true,
GPT and get
true,
the
true.
details you need. I mean,
Yeah.
why would you need to memorize these things?
And
So
recently, I was scrolling TikTok and I saw in America, I guess that technology has not yet found its way here. But it's like a small pen. Now, instead of you solving an equation, you just swipe through the equation and then it gives you the answer.
yeah, exactly.
So
So
that's,
the world's changed. I think
mm,
students are going to have a. It's kind of good in some ways. It's also going to be challenging for them in other ways as
yes,
well.
I feel like a lot of people are not going to be using a lot of effort to reason out on things, to be
Yeah,
creative enough to,
yeah,
create their own answers, be creative in the school,
sure.
yeah.
Well, I know that one of the reasons I was able to do successfully and get through my degrees, which were very complicated in mathematics because it was electrical engineering,
Mm-hmm.
is when I was quite young, I had a teacher who got me into doing mental math, solving
Mm-hmm.
math problems in my head. And I think a lot of it had to do with my bad vision, because it was like, well, if I could solve it in my head, I didn't have to spend time writing things down. So, if you could like tell me like, 25 times 40, I could say, okay, that's 1,000, like do it in my head, like really quickly. So what that did for me later in like university is I go to class and maybe I forget my calculator. Okay, well, I could still do the test just fine because I didn't need the calculator. I could do it in my head.
Wow.
So, you know, kids nowadays, they're not going to be able to do that though. They're not learning how to, I've been told my one daughter,
Yeah.
she wouldn't learn her times tables when she was the time to learn her multiplication.
Yeah.
So I said, I'll buy you an iPhone Pro Max if you will just memorize your
The
times tables
timetable.
up to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
9 times 9.
Mm-hmm.
She wouldn't do it.
Over here, we used to memorize the times table by, being caned.
Yeah.
You memorize it by being caned. So tomorrow you'll come in the morning and you're told you have to stand in front of the whole class and memorize it by yourself.
Oh
If
yeah.
not, you're going to get punished. But anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
How did you now decide to come into Africa as a tech guru?
Yeah.
I can
Sure.
say that.
Yeah.
And what was your first experience? Why did you decide to relocate to Africa?
Yeah. It's quite a long story.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I can kind of start from kind of a little bit before that, from the beginning when I graduated from university. Uh, the job market, I was struggling to get a job, and I was able to connect with this firm that had jobs for people with disabilities. They're like consulting. So if you had a disability, then they would help you find jobs,
Wow. Okay.
particularly with the U.S. government,
Mm.
because the U.S. government hires a lot of people with disabilities. It's something that they kind of do to, help people out, I guess.
Yeah.
So I was able to get a job doing software consulting
Mm-hmm.
for large government customers such as the NASA, the U.S. Air Force. A lot of these contracts that had like, for instance, the Air Force One. Um, doing a lot of software work
Yeah.
for these big things. And so I did that for about 10 years in the U.S. and became pretty successful doing this project management and consulting on these large software projects. So the initial introduction to Africa, I would say, is when I met my wife.
Mm-hmm.
So when I met my wife, she was completely different than, I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an engineer. Yeah, she was a dancer.
Oh,
She was into dancing, did a
those are
degree in
two
dance.
different worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I first met her, you ask people, where are you from? She said, well, I grew up in Texas, but I moved to Kenya when I was a young child.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was asking her, oh, so you like the safaris, all the animals? And she'd say, well, I've done so many safaris, I'm not really interested anymore in that. And I was like really surprised.
Mm-hmm.
I knew nothing about Africa. Remember, I come from the very small rural area of
Yes,
Texas.
yes.
You know, even growing up, I don't even think we had anybody from other countries in our school. You know, we didn't have anybody from India or China or wherever. It was just Texans.
Oh,
You know,
yeah, 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 yeah,
so
yeah. Mhm.
so um, you know, she said I'm from Kenya. I was like, I don't know what this is. And so over time, she was really sort of still interested in the area because she grew up here. This was where she would consider like her teenage years or childhood. How the journey to Africa sort of started
Mhm.
is one day she came in and she was teaching a lady from Darfur, Sudan. So she was getting her master's degree in linguistics and she was studying a lot of languages, a lot of stuff I know nothing about.
Mhm.
And she came in and she said, "Hey, there's this like refugee lady from Sudan, Darfur, Sudan,
Mhm.
and she's really having a hard time right now. I hope you don't mind. I gave her $100 of our money because she like needed some help and like was having a really hard time."
Yes.
Now, of course, I knew nothing about Africa, so I was very upset about this. You know,
Oh.
I said, "Oh, you know, I'm Scott. You know, I've got the MBA. You know, I'm this business person. I'm sure this lady's a Nigerian email scammer.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
By the way, there is that.
you know, because I don't know the difference between Nigeria or
Kenya.
Sudan or anything.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just
Yeah.
Africa. You know,
By the way, it's let
yeah,
me just ask a question because a lot of Americans, by the way, confuse Africa. They think Africa is one country,
yeah,
and it's not one country.
yeah.
It's a continent with different countries. Why is that? There is no awareness that is created over there, or what is usually the issue?
I think it's just, I mean, it was different when I was growing up,
Mhm.
right? When I was growing up, all we had about Africa was these very old videos from maybe the 1960s and 70s. It was usually a guy going into the jungle of Africa. You know, ladies aren't wearing shirts. You know, these
Yes,
old,
yes,
you
yes,
know, it's
yes,
like, and it's like he says, I'm in the jungle of Africa. Okay,
yes.
well, that's what
Mm,
okay, I'm in Africa.
mm.
That's all you knew. So everybody has a very limited view. They weren't coming to Nairobi and like, here's the business people of Nairobi. Here's the business people of Nigeria. They weren't showing that side of things. It was
Yes.
all like a very, just kind of like I say, when you
Traditional.
when you see Texas, you think of like the cowboys and stuff. Well,
True.
that's only like a very small, older part of the culture. It's not really something that's that prevalent, nowadays.
Mhm.
So I think that's the issue,
Mm.
really. I mean, and then also it's kind of like if I were to ask you about the U.S. and say, tell me the difference between Kentucky and Montana,
I wouldn't know.
you wouldn't know,
Yeah,
right?
I
So
wouldn't know.
it's just until you've been, you can't have that awareness of what some place is like,
Yes.
you know.
Okay.
So I think that's what it is. But that's what happened in this situation. So I was very angry with my wife. I mean, you can imagine $100. That's over 10,000 shillings
Yes.
that she gave to a lady who needed some help without talking to me first. I don't know how I still stayed married after this, because I
Wow.
was, very angry with my wife. And so when I told my wife, I said,
He was
look,
just helping Scott.
it just, I said, look, I'm really angry about this. I want to confront this lady who's taking our money. So I want you to set up an appointment and we're going to go over to her house and I'm going to confront her about how she's scamming our money. Um, so my wife, said, fine, we'll go to this lady's house. We went to the lady's house, and it was so surprising because you open the door, and the Sudanese lady standing there, and she embraces me, and she said, "My brother, come inside." She says, "The feast is about to begin," and there was piles of the pizza, feasts of like sodas
Oh,
everywhere. She had really put a lot of effort into what she could do. I mean, this
mm,
isn't a bad part of town. It was like a very humble house,
mm,
but she was very inviting and said,
yeah.
"Come on in." And she said, in my culture, whenever you help somebody out, you now that person becomes like a brother to you. And
Mm,
so we're here to celebrate. And I could tell the money that we'd given, say, made a big difference. Like it really helped her out in some situation she was going
of
through.
course, yeah.
So we went in there and we sat down and we're enjoying the sodas. And somehow she had Sudanese TV turned on.
Mhm.
And it's like, what? I don't even know where you get Sudanese TV in
So at this
America.
time you're in the Sudan
Yeah,
in
no,
Sudan, am I in
I
Kenya?
was in Kenya. I, mean,
Ah,
I was
okay.
in the U.S. still at the time. This
Oh,
lady was a refugee who had
oh,
fled from Sudan.
okay, okay,
She
okay.
fled from
Uh-huh.
Sudan. So
Mm,
um, she was watching Sudanese TV, and there's all this, from Darfur. At the time, it was this time with this war, and
mm,
people like. I was surprised I saw on the TV. It's like people like killing each other, and It was just really pretty terrible. And I was asking her, what's this on the TV? And she said, oh yeah, there's this group and that group, and this one's killing this one, and this one killed this one. And she was telling the story about how she had to flee from Sudan, like her husband got involved in something, like with the politics or something, and they fled with the children, and then when she came to the U.S., the husband died, and there's this terrible story about what had happened. So I started learning more about what refugees were going through.
Yes.
So as we started hanging around this lady more, at the same time, there was a group of refugees who joined our church in the U.S. And again, don't know anything about Africa or any of these groups of people. But I started seeing these African children, running around the church, and it's kind of like wondering what's going on, because I've never interacted with
Wow.
these groups of
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
before. And I started talking to them, and again, they're telling these stories about going through wars in different countries. Oh, one girl had a hearing aid. So why do you have the hearing aid? Well, I was running from the bomb, and the bomb blew up in my ear. Another one. Well, yeah, I was going with my grandfather, and he got diarrhea and died along the way, like as we were trying to move from one country to the other, like just telling these terrible stories.
Yes.
So I got to know these kids, and I thought, well, how could I help them? And as I was talking to them, the one thing they always said is like, I really love and enjoy the school. I miss the school that I had back in Africa. That's the one part I really miss.
Yeah.
So I thought, wow, it's amazing that kids like really love school, and they have this opportunity for education. So I started a program where I was helping the kids like with science and technology training. So we would set up in like this bad part of town where in the U.S. where the refugee kids would live, and I would teach them robotics and help them out outside of school. And we would go to these contests where the top schools in Texas, where the really rich families would go. They had this city, Dallas, where these people pay, $30,000 a year to go to send their children to school. They would compete in these science contests against these kids, these refugee kids who I was just working out of this little apartment in a bad part of town.
Of course.
And would train them, and these kids would come and beat these kids from these rich schools. So I was like, wow, this is interesting. Education really has a power over these, to lift people out of poverty or lift them up,
And at that time, these kids are like, I need to study hard so that I can become this person. So education is all they have.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they were in a very tough situation because they were in the U.S. They had nothing. They had to flee their country. They weren't really that comfortable in the environment because, I was really surprised because, like, even the lady from Sudan, she would cry about, wanting to return to Darfur, Sudan. And I would say, why would you want to go to this desert, this like place with warlords?
Yeah.
The place at Darfur, like, why would you want to go there? She said, well, that's my home. That's where my family is. That's where I grew up. All the trees have a memory. All the buildings it's a special place. So that's what I kind of learned is everybody has like this affinity or this love for their home area. So anyways, I still at that point, I was working with the refugees. I had no idea of moving to Africa. I was like, I'll just help these kids here. And
But let me ask you, at that time you're still working with the refugees. So after you found this lady was very welcoming and she has, prepared something for you guys to eat. Were like, okay, I'm gonna take my words back, or did you just?
yeah, I mean, you always have to apologize to your wife.
Yeah.
You have to do that. That's a part of the requirements. Because I've made some big mistakes, and she was very forgiving, fortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what was interesting then, I kept just thinking about these stories that I would hear from these kids, and like the things they'd been through. And I was like, how could I help? How could I help more? The education is great, but there's a bigger problem happening in the world. And how could I be more involved? And I was there in Texas. I was just stuck. I didn't know what to do. I was like, and at the time I was praying a lot, really this idea of God, I want what you want. Not what I want. What I want's a big house, a lot of money, fancy lifestyle, nice watch, nice clothes. But, we were kind of going through this thing of saying, God, I want what you want. So tell me what you want me to do. And I would pray that, and, for a while, nothing would really get answered or move forward. So one night I went to sleep, and I had this vision, a dream, and I never had anything like it before. It's like the most surprising thing I ever had. I'm not this person who like has visions or prophecies or anything. I'm not that type of person. But I had this dream, and all I saw this African boy standing in front of me, and there was a sign that said ENTEBBE up high, written there. And it was so vivid. I asked the boy, I said, "Where am I?" And he said, "Don't you know?" He said, "You've arrived in Entebbe,
Oh,
and the Lord our God has sent you to help us."
wow.
And so I thought, what? What is this? And I kind of went through this dream, and I woke up like kind of sweating, like very, like this vivid thing.
I know because it's too vivid, yeah?
Yeah.
It's too vivid. Mhm.
And so I asked my wife. I woke her up, shook her, woke her up, said, "What is this word? Entebbe? Couldn't even pronounce it. I was like Entebbe, Edebe.
Yes,
I was like,
yes.
I don't know. I could just spell it
Mm.
because from reading the sign. I said, what does that word mean? And my wife, who had grown up here in Africa,
Mm-hmm.
she said, "Oh," she said, "Yeah, I know what that is." She said, "That's the commercial airport into Uganda. If you're going to fly into Uganda, that's where you would enter." So I thought, well, Uganda, what is that? I didn't
Of course, yeah. Now you've just heard about Sudan. Now it says
yeah, I'm just
Uganda.
learning a piece at a time. So Uganda, so I run to I have the little home office in there, and I run to my office and I type on the computer Uganda, and the first thing that pops up is the photo of this general guy named Joseph Kony. It said Joseph Kony leads the Lord's Resistance Army.
Ah.
And I don't know if you know about this guy, but it said the Lord's Resistance Army has terrorized northern Uganda for, I don't remember, like the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's the worst humanitarian crisis in the world today that nobody's doing anything about it. And so I thought when it said nobody's doing anything about this, well, it was kind of like God just called me saying like, well, you could do something about that.
Yes.
Now you know, because I knew
Mhm.
nothing about it. I never heard of this thing before. So I went in and talked to my wife, and my wife could tell I came in, and she said, "We're going to go visit Uganda, aren't we?" I said,
Because
"Yeah,
you'd
I
already
think we
taken
have to do
interest in
that."
that, yeah.
Yeah, I said, "I think we're going to go to Uganda." So we started making preparations. We found a contact in Uganda, and we came to visit northern Uganda to see the situation. Now,
Mhm.
I don't want to make it sound like I was going into a war zone or anything like crazy like that, because the war
Yeah.
had actually ended and the people had lived in displacement camps, and by that time they had started moving out of their displacement camps and returning home to their home villages, but they
Oh,
had been in these
okay.
camps for like many years.
Now, which year was that?
This was in the year 2010. Yeah,
Mm.
2010.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of amazing because I had never been to Uganda, and we showed up there, and to go to northern Uganda. And even the people we were driving with, they were like, we're from the southern Uganda, and people tell us we go to the north, they think we're going to die.
Oh.
Because what they would used to do is the rebels, they would padlock your lips if you spoke out against them. They would put a padlock to your lip.
It was that serious.
Yeah, and it was crazy when we drove over. There's a bridge that you go to get into northern Uganda, and immediately when you're driving on, you see people on bicycles. Maybe they'd be missing a leg because if they had a bicycle taxi, they would cut their leg off to keep them from like going to the government to like report where the
Yeah,
location of the
yeah,
rebels,
yeah.
or yeah, people with their ears cut off, because the they would say, "Oh, you can't listen to what we're saying, or we're going to cut your ear off."
Mm.
It was quite dramatic, and even the places we would visit, there'd be signs for be careful for landmines out here. They would talk about finding bodies, that they would find out there in the bush.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Like I'd never seen anything like it before, and like a quite a big level of poverty that was out there. It was quite amazing. So we traveled into the bush, and the one thing that really struck out to me is we reached a village, and several, maybe like 100 or 200 kids like came out of the bush, you know, and they were there, and
They were hiding or
well, it was kind of like they were around the area, and their school had been destroyed from,
oh.
and they had a little mud building they were meeting in, like a small mud school,
Yeah.
but there was all these kids and they didn't have a school, and so and it was so far to walk to like another school because this was way far in the bush. So we talked to these people and said, like, could you use like a school? And they said, yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
so it kind of took us on this path of, building school programs in northern Uganda.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we came back and told people like, hey, we came back to the U.S. At the time we weren't living in Africa. We came back to the U.S. and said, hey, there's people out here that need help. They need like schools,
Yeah, yeah. They need school, they
so
need
they don't have, so
basic needs.
basic needs. So we went down this path of like building a school, and I was kind of doing that from from here and raising money, and that kind of started our path and introduction
Yes.
to Africa.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
so that was kind of, and we started to see like a lot of really good progress from those programs.
All right. But let me ask you, throughout this experience, you said you've worked for NASA.
Yeah,
Um, there's an interesting fact that I'm very curious
sure.
about when it comes to NASA.
Yeah.
Is it true that the moon landing is fake or is it real? Let's just clear those.
Just clear it all out.
Yeah.
Well, I can't say for sure. I would say that there is a lot of government programs
Mm.
around the space program,
Yeah.
a lot of money that's been spent.
Hmm.
I think it would be very hard to fake the moon landing, but I can't speak for certain on it.
Of
So
course.
I'm definitely not the expert. I think it's always good to be a little cautious.
Yeah.
Like for instance, I saw this week there's this guy Jeffrey Epstein they talk about in the U.S. I don't know if you've heard about him, but
Yes,
he's
I've heard about it.
very bad guy involved in
Yeah.
some sex trafficking and things,
Mm.
and they just came out and they say no, there's not a client list for Jeffrey Epstein.
Mm.
We found no, we haven't found anything, and so there's definitely a government cover up around that
Yes.
because a lot of big names are involved in that list, and so they covered it up. So with the moon landing, sure, something could be covered up,
Of course.
something could be faked. But I worked with a lot of those programs and saw a lot of the technology that they have, like how the space toilet works, how the the different things.
Actually, yeah. The other day I was watching a video where somebody's trying to wring a watery cloth,
Yeah,
and then you just see water is just floating. It's not, there's no gravity over there.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So a lot has been invested in the space travel,
Mm.
and so um, yeah, I think it would be kind of a waste for them to have faked it, but
Yeah, by the way, it will be a waste because the other day I also saw this. Is it the founder of Virgin Atlantic or the
yeah,
CEO? I'm not sure.
yeah,
That guy. He has established space tourism, and
yeah,
he was the first one to actually go over there and
sure,
show
yeah,
people this is actually what is working. I'm also seeing Elon Musk is exploring Mars. Is it Mars?
yeah, trying to go to
Yeah,
Mars, yeah,
yeah.
exactly,
So I don't think it will be fake as you've said.
yeah.
We just need to sit and wait and watch
Wait
and
and
see
see what
what
happens.
happens. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
hopefully it's not fake because that would be a pretty big, big shock to believe in
Exactly,
that.
because
Yeah,
I will, my whole childhood is a lie,
yeah,
guys. It has
yeah,
been a lie, especially when they do production when it comes to movies and the world is ending. It is also usually the four countries that are now going to the space and
yeah,
all that. So yeah, it's interesting.
yeah,
But coming back to Uganda,
yeah,
your experience in Uganda, now you've started out these
yeah, yeah.
programs. How did you begin, first of all? How did you establish yourself in Uganda?
Well, so I was really doing it like kind of in a part-time,
Mm.
volunteer type of thing. Like I wasn't making any money off of it. There wasn't a way to like have a living doing it. You're just going to your friends and family, like, hey, these kids need schools,
Oh, yeah.
care, can you support, and then you have to pay for your own travel out there to, back and forth. It was quite crazy. But the way I was able to do it is at the time when I was working for some of these government projects,
Mm.
um, you know, the government projects are really nice because they provide you with like a good retirement when you become older, uh, and you don't have to work like that hard at the job, right? It's like the demands aren't there because it's not like a startup company. It's not like it's a government job essentially. So,
Yeah.
a mentor of mine who I'd worked with, he told me, well, it's sort of okay you're doing this government job, but uh, what he would recommend is that I get involved in a hobby. Some people play golf, some people do other things to keep their time busy while they're working these government jobs. And so
Yeah.
I kind of took my time to do volunteer work and
Mhm.
to do that. So that's sort of how we did it. But over time, I realized like, hey, this is like becoming so big that I really need to be in the country full time, or I need to be in Africa full time because there's just no way to manage this remotely because all the scams people do,
Of
all
course,
the
yeah, they will play you.
yeah. I mean, one of the scams we had was we had a farming project. A guy came and said, "Hey, I've got
In
28."
northern Uganda.
Yeah, northern Uganda. He
Uh-huh.
said, "Well, I've got 20 acres of land, which is
Wow.
pretty big." And he says,
Big.
"Yeah," he says, "and if you buy all the seeds and
Hmm.
everything, then we'll grow the food, the maize, the beans, the potatoes, everything to feed the school for the year on this 20 acres."
Yeah.
Well, so and we need all this equipment as well, maybe the sprayers and the
The
digging
tractors. Yeah.
equipment and all that stuff. So even to buy some cows to do the
The plowing,
plowing,
yeah.
you know. So okay, fine. You know, we raise the money, we invest in the thing for the farm. Well, after about 3 months, we go to look at the how high is the maize growing.
So you purchased the land?
No, didn't purchase
Oh,
it.
okay.
I wouldn't get involved in that. But we had to do some things like clear the trees off the land. Right, it had
Yes.
a lot of trees. Okay, we
Mm,
have to cut the trees down. All the timbers they disappear.
of course, they made money out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you go and you look and I come from the farming area, so I know what you know farming looks like. You
Of
start
course,
looking,
yeah.
say now it's 3 months later. Where's the mace? Oh, you see, it's right
The
there.
small
The,
ones.
the tiny thing.
By now they should be up here, somewhere here.
It's like guys come out. So what I found is the guy took the seeds,
Yeah.
and I don't know what he was actually thinking was going to happen, but he took it and he planted it in like his aunt's garden, like to his relatives, and then
Ah,
and then
he
they
used it for
call
his own personal use.
yeah, then they call and say that the cows have eaten like the plastic bags and died, and they had to butcher the cows, and everybody ate the meat. So
Wow.
it's just all scams happening all the time.
And actually, this is something that is making genuine people who want to collaborate and work with, you know,
Yeah,
foreigners and all that. They make it very hard for genuine people to collaborate with
yeah,
foreigners
exactly.
because now it looks like it's an African problem when it's just a few greedy people.
Yeah,
Mm.
I think that's the problem is, and if you're working with like 20 people, there's always like one guy who's got like a scheme, right?
True.
And he's
Yeah,
and he's
he's
and he's
planning to.
kind of disturb things, and so
Yeah.
it really has hurt a lot of people because I know so many people from U.S. who have been involved in these type of situations
Wow.
where they just give up. They're just like I can't deal with this. I'm raising money from people. They're trusting me with the
Mm.
funds. Now I go and I invest in these things, and then you have to come back and like the results are really bad. And so,
Yeah,
and we've known a lot of people that have just been involved in these projects, and it always like goes in a really bad direction.
of course.
Good.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's like one thing for like the young people to listen to is like if you're willing to collaborate with people, you can get a lot of development. People are willing to help, but
Mm.
there has to be a level of trust that's there.
And I think also it's just the mindset and the mentality. If you don't see the bigger picture, then you will just want to
Mm,
eat now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in some cultures,
Mhm.
and I don't know if it's like certain areas but there's certain cultures where it's almost like that's just the normal thing, right? It's like if somebody is stupid enough to give you their money,
Mm.
then it's not really a sin or
Yeah,
anything to
it's
take it.
okay. Yeah.
It's
For
okay.
them, it's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fine. So
Mhm.
that's a mentality that yes, there are people in America that have that mentality as well, but there's a lot of people that want to do honest business and
Mm.
they want to work with honest people. So I think that was a challenge that was a real struggle, getting settled there.
And
So
and the project, did you continue with the project for the farming or you just ditched it?
yeah, we just had to ditch it. I mean, and
Mm.
we had 20 acres. We could have made like all kinds of food for the kids, but I was like, okay, we're done with this one. Every time I would get even remotely involved in any kind of like scam like that, then
Mhm.
I would just I'd leave it
Leave it
because
alone,
I'm
yeah.
not dealing with those people that would do those type of scams.
Oh, okay.
So, but we had like all kinds of things like that as we got started. So I quickly realized I needed to be uh, in Africa to see these things on the ground. You can't come like three or
Once,
four times a
yeah.
year and like look at the field and go, oh, no
Okay.
maize grows. No.
At that time, the technology over there was not that advanced, so you cannot tell them, send
Yeah,
me a
yeah,
photo.
send a photo. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, but that was the thing. Even we would have the photos, and they would
Oh,
send the
yeah. They
photos
will
like
take over different.
we said buy a plow for the
Mm.
cows, and they would take a photo of their relatives' plow. Oh yeah, here's the plow that we got.
Yeah.
Um, so what ended up happening is there's an organization called Christian Ministries in Africa, which has a big church here in Langada
Okay.
here in Karen,
Mhm.
um, and they build orphanages, children's homes, schools, do feeding programs in the slum areas, Kibera, those slum areas. They have a
Yeah.
lot of different projects or medical clinics. Um, and they approached me to come and help them to oversee their projects here.
Yeah.
So like, hey, if you want to come here to Africa and we've got these projects and we can kind of merge our work that we're doing together because you're building schools, we're building operating schools,
Yeah.
and it's a nice fit together
Mhm.
and we need some extra help here coming in on the to help operate a lot of these programs. So
Mhm.
it made a nice fit. My wife and I talked about it quite a bit, and we
Mm.
realized, yeah, it makes sense that um, we could do that. We could come and like sell everything we have in the U.S.
Yeah.
Our
And
kids
just
were
move.
young
Yeah.
and come and move
Yeah.
to Africa to do this work, and
Mm-hmm.
that it would get us on the ground to oversee these projects
Of
and
course.
be
Yeah.
more impactful, which was very tricky because you have to like fundraise from your friends and family, you know.
Wow. And I think it takes a lot of courage to just decide to move, come here and help.
Yeah,
You know, it that is that's very human of you, you know.
yeah. I mean, and I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't know anything about where are you going to live, how do you get a car, how do you just like the basic like things of
Yeah, where
life,
do
or how do you
you,
do
yeah,
transport. I mean, what kind of food are you going to eat? You don't know anything about it.
of
So
course, yeah.
but yeah, we agreed, and we started the process of selling everything that we owned, um, except for like we did bring quite a few boxes on the plane with us, which was kind of crazy. We didn't know what to bring. We brought a lot of stuff that was kind of like wasteful, I think.
Yeah.
But we yeah, we made it over here and started doing the work of children's homes and doing a lot of these humanitarian projects. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, okay, that's amazing. So that's when now you ditched the project, you came to Kenya, decided to now do children's.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Ah,
So
okay.
yeah. So we did that for a couple of years. It was really, I'd say, fulfilling work. I think we, a lot of, orphans, like kids who had a lot of problems, were in the system, and we got to see them grow and mature, and really kind of be like a parental figure to them, help them.
It must be. And at this time, are you working or you're just doing charity full time?
Well, I mean, it was a full-time job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the organization had 250 churches, about 10 schools, four children's homes. I mean, it was a big organization
Yes,
and a lot and so I was handling a lot of the operations for that organization. So
mm-hmm.
it was work, but the way the payment was is it was more like a charity thing. So that you don't get paid. There's no cash flow or money from helping to get clothes for children, or
Yeah,
helping them to get their HIV medication or whatever it
true,
might be. So
true, true.
it was kind of like more of a, wouldn't really call it a volunteer thing, but it was a kind of like a missionary is how I would treat it.
Oh,
And what was interesting about it at the time, as well as I also got the opportunity to become a pastor at the time. So
you became
um,
a pastor.
yeah, so I
Huh?
was I was able to preach for the church and be involved in the church, because a large part of the organization was around that aspect, which was really interesting. I would say it's not my natural skill set. Like I'm not a you
I would
know,
imagine.
yeah, but
Yeah,
it was really exciting, and just to work with people, and yeah, and so it was just really took my kind of career in a very different direction,
yeah.
and I got to learn a lot about all the different problems that were happening around the area. Like a really interesting story is we came in 2013, so I just been
Yeah.
in the country for a very short time, and the week before the Garissa Mall attack happened,
Yes. Oh, the Westgate. Yes.
the Westgate Mall
Yeah,
attack, yeah,
yeah.
Westgate. So before the Westgate happened, the weekend before,
Mm-hmm.
I went to this place called Garissa. I don't know if you know where Garissa is.
Garissa in
Near Somalia, near towards
northeastern
Somalia.
Kenya.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And there was a pastor there we were working with on that side, and they had been under attack already. Like some things had been happening there, and the security situation was not very good.
Yes, yes.
We had big people with big guns guarding the church
Wow.
because they were like, the situation isn't very safe. And there was a group of churches that we were meeting with, and like local coalition,
Yeah.
to figure out what was happening. And it was just kind of like it was kind of a scary, even kind of a scary
Be
situation.
scary
You-
because now you see your security
mhm.
is you're really worried about your security.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you could tell that something was not right, or something wasn't going on well. And so I got to preach there in Garissa, talk to the people, and kind of encourage the local pastors that were there. And being an American going into Garissa was kind of like you kind of
Something,
stand out.
yeah, you
So you're
stand
not,
out.
it's not a place that like a lot of Americans. So you could even tell, like there was a lot of people at the hotel watching
Yeah.
you. Like, see, something just didn't feel right.
You
So
actually become a target at that time.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it was really funny because I went home to my when I came home, and I wrote a message to our church back home, and I said, guys, I don't know what's going on, but I feel like something really bad's happening.
Yeah.
I said, I just can't tell you what it is, but something's not right.
Yeah.
Because I was just in this place, Carissa, in just the atmosphere, like
Yeah. It's off.
something's off,
Yeah.
right? And so then, of course, the Garissa attack happened the next weekend.
Wow. The Westgate attack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Westgate attack happened, and my wife and I were scheduled. We had been talking with DJ Sud, and he had set us up to be on the radio that that morning after the attack.
Oh wow, really?
I mean, it was just coincidental. We were already scheduled to be talking, and so we had to go and talk about the Westgate attack.
Yes, and the
that
experience as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just, I mean, just a lot of interesting things happened during that time period
Yeah.
that we were just kind of thrown into the mix of some things I never imagined happening. But yeah, so we were quite involved with a lot of interesting projects
Oh,
during that
okay.
time.